Good morning and good afternoon and welcome everyone. We will start our session at 2 minutes after the top of the hour. Again, welcome. We're glad to have you. Good evening. We'll start our session at 2 minutes after the top of the hour. Again, good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Welcome to everyone. We will start our session at 2 minutes after the top of the hour. Again, welcome. We're glad to have you. Welcome, everyone. We'll get started in a couple minutes. We'll allow others to join us. Again, 2 minutes after the top of the hour, so another couple minutes, so you still have a chance to get coffee or something to drink, and we'll get started. Glad to have you. Thank you and welcome. Again, welcome everyone. We're going to start out in about another 30 seconds to allow others to join us. Again, we're glad to have you, those that have joined me earlier classes this week. Again, welcome back. I see Brad, I see you from Michigan. Thank you for sharing your location. Awesome. Thank you, Joseph, from New York City. Thanks for sharing. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Again, welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you, depending on where you're calling in from around the world. We're glad to have you. Welcome to our Sumo Administration Certification Session. My name is Odell Gordon. I am a technical trainer here at Sumo Logic. I'm calling in from the Midwest. Nice sunny skies. It's going to be a nice day. Hopefully you are somewhere comfortable as well. Just a brief background introduction. I've been in IT for 30 plus years now, playing various roles, database administrator, DBA, technical trainer, DevOps. So again, centralizing around data, okay? I enjoy training. So for the last 15 to 20 years, I've been in technical training and just enjoying my time here. We have been fortunate enough to be joined by the training manager here at Sumo Logic. Josh, if you want to introduce yourself.
Sure. Thanks, Odell. Welcome, everybody, to today's session. As I see a lot of familiar faces or familiar names, so welcome back. For today, I'll be manning the chat. So if there's any questions about the content or feedback or what have you, post it in the chat. So we have a good interactive session for you today. And Odell, I'll let you take it away.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Yep. All right. So let's go ahead and get into the session, ladies and gentlemen. Again, as Josh mentioned, welcome back to those of you that have joined me this week in the earlier classes, or you've joined me in prior classes. Again, so our agenda for today is we're going to have an opportunity to download a file that we're going to use as a source. So we're going to download a file for our labs coming up. Then you and I will get into collectors and metadata, getting an understanding and the foundation of those again. Then you and I will get into the actual training environment, and we'll do our first labs 1, 2, and 3, where we set up a collector and 2 sources. Then we'll get into the optimization tools. We'll look at the overview of our administration setup. Then we'll do hands-on labs 4 and 6, where we install an app and create data ingest alert. And then finally, you'll have an opportunity to, of course, take the certification exam, okay? You'll notice that it states that we'll do hands-on labs 4 and 6. You'll probably wonder, well, where's 5, Odell? Well, when we get to that point, you're going to understand that we allow those that take this course to go back and take the fundamentals. So we allow an opportunity for those to take the fundamentals if they haven't already. And you'll see it as we get closer to that point. As I mentioned, you'll have the opportunity to take the exam, and we're going to reward you with the $15 voucher from Uber Eats, just as we did with the other courses. I'll put the link in the chat as we get closer to the exam. Okay. All right, let's save some bandwidth here, and I'll turn off my video, let you focus on the lecture as well as the slides. Our first topic here is the high-level data flow. You may have seen this slide in some of our other courses if you've taken them, okay? And essentially this, what happened there? All right, essentially this slide is letting us know the data flow, okay? And we talked about this slide often, where we're trying to use a vehicle to get your logs and your metrics into our environment, okay? Once you get your logs and metrics into our environment using a collector where it defines your sources, then you and I will be able to search and analyze. And in our search mastery course, that's where we spend a lot of time on the searching and analyzing using operators. Today, we're going to spend a lot of our time on the data collection, defining collectors and sources. Remember that collector is going to encrypt, compress, and send your logs and your metrics and your machine data into our environment. And the last phase of our data flow is actually setting up visualizations and dashboards, being able to monitor and creating alerts. So that's the flow, getting your data in, searching through the data, and sharing and displaying and visualizing. Now, we're going to break those steps down a little further here, and we talk about getting your data into Sumo Logic. We're talking about tens of thousand log messages, okay? And again, we're using a collector, okay? There's two types of collectors. There's the installed collector, and there's the hosted collector. The hosted collector is a web-based object, okay? So the first step, again, is getting your data into Sumo. And we do that by using that collector. After we have your data into Sumo, we, of course, are going to be able to build log searches and metric searches, as well as live tail searching, okay? Again, we'll have that ability to build those searches after your logs and metrics are brought into the Sumo environment. Then step 3 here, we'll be able to visualize and monitor. One of the things that we discussed and talked about in our fundamentals as well as our search mastery is the app catalog that Sumo Logic continuous intelligence platform provides for you. There's a ton of apps for you to start to utilize to help you get comfortable with the tool. We're going to install some apps as well, but what you're seeing on the screenshot here is our app catalog, and you're seeing some of the actual dashboards that are from those predefined apps. Those predefined apps comes with searches, predefined searches, as well as dashboards. All right, so again, that was that high level of once I get my data in, what I'll be able to do, and some of the actual features that are available for me. Now let's talk about and discuss collecting that data. Now you'll see our topic here, a strategy for data collection. For those of you that were in my courses earlier this week, or you've taken the fundamental course with one of our trainers, one of the things that we talk about is the home tab and the learn link. On the home tab and the learn link, we actually give you some quick start videos. One of those videos actually talks about a data collection strategy. You want to have a strategy when it comes to collecting all of those logs and metrics and all of that machine data. So I know this slide looks overwhelming. It's the same slide we've seen if you've been in my courses this week, okay? You and I are going to divide this slide in half, okay? Right down the middle, the center of it. I often give you an analogy of leaning on your imagination and talking about a highway, okay? We imagine that highway, and on one end of the highway is that Sumo Logic cloud-based environment. Okay, that's this right up here. On the other end of that highway is your logs and your metrics, all of your machine data. Okay, and as I mentioned, we're dividing this slide in half. On one half of the slide, you'll see a descriptor install collector. On the other half, you'll see hosted collectors. Okay. Now, if your logs and your metrics and all of that machine data that you're collecting is in AWS, or maybe Azure, or maybe it's in a Google Cloud. If your logs and metrics are in the cloud already, then there's no installation to do. Essentially, you're going to let us know where the actual logs and metrics are stored, as well as if there's any access credentials that we'll need. And Sumo Logic will host those logs and metrics for you. So again, on the right side, we're saying if your logs and metrics are in the cloud, there's no installation. You're just going to tell the environment where your logs and metrics that you're collecting reside, and if there's any permissions that need to access those logs and metrics. On the other hand, we have an install collector. And there's multiple examples here of an install collector. Let's take a look here at a distributed installation. We have several servers, and we've installed a collector on each one of those servers. Those collectors are going to encrypt, compress, and send your logs and metrics through the firewall up into the Sumo Logic environment. That is a distributed approach for an on-prem environment. Another example, you could have a standalone approach where you install a Sumo Logic collector and all the other servers feed to that server. That Sumo Logic collector is going to encrypt, compress, send it up through the firewall and into Sumo Logic. So again, the big takeaway from this here screenshot is there's two vehicles that's going to get your logs and metrics into our environment. They're called install collectors and hosted collectors. Typically, and for an on-prem environment, you're going to use an install collector. And for a cloud-based environment, you're going to be using a hosted collector. Let's further break that down. As I mentioned, an install collector is a small piece of code that you're going to install on your systems, okay? You can do it remotely or locally, okay? It's going to collect that data available in your deployments. It also allows you to look at the logs that are being created and updated when you do an install collector. So there's logs that you can help troubleshoot if there's any issues. So this is all an install collector. On the other hand, a hosted collector, again, there's nothing to install. It's agentless. It's hosted by us, Sumo Logic, once you give us the credentials, okay? Again, the host sources to collect seamlessly from AWS, the Google and Microsoft products. There's no issues there. It really works really quickly and seamless. You can receive logs and metrics uploaded via URL as well for that hosted collector. All right, big takeaway here, hosted, there's no installation. Install, there's installation. With install, you have the ability to look at the logs and find out if there's any issues, okay? With hosted, it's seamless with the major ones. Next, how many collectors do I need, Odell? That's typically the question, okay? Well, it depends. An install collector on a dedicated machine would be used when you're running a high bandwidth of network, when you have a high logging level. That's when you want to use a dedicated machine. Or if you need a central collection point for many sources. That's another example of a dedicated machine. When you want to use more than one collector, if you have it to ingest more than 500 separate files. If you're expecting your logging traffic to be more than 15,000 events per second. If you have any memory or CPU limitations, those are some instances where you want to have more than one collector. Or if you have separated geographical clusters or regions. Those are examples of installing more than one collector. So again, we're still talking about and describing that collector and those different types of collectors, okay? On the left side of this screen here, you see a hosted collector, okay? Again, it's seamless. They don't require installation. It's just going to feed your logs and metrics into our Sumo Logic environment. On the other end, we have our install collector. And again, we have those two different types of approaches, okay? The first screenshot icon up there, or screen image up there, is when you have a centralized collector. All the other servers are feeding their machine language to that centralized collector. This is, of course, going to encrypt, compress, and send it to Sumo Logic. And then that distributed or local collection where we add in a collector on multiple machines, they all are encrypting, compressing, and sending all of those messages up to the Sumo environment. All right, so again, let's look at them from, again, a 500-foot overview. Now we're going to look at, okay, what if I do an actual hosted collector? These are what you're seeing, some of the benefits, the drawbacks, and some of the scenarios. So when we talk about your cloud-based collector, so maybe you're collecting your S3 buckets. Maybe you're collecting your cloud Okta, your CrowdStrike. Maybe your syslogs, okay? So those are the source types that you're going to be collecting. It's going to be seamless, all right? From Amazon S3 buckets all the way to the HTTP sources, okay? Remember, they don't require any installation, any activation. There's no physical requirements, okay? Because there's no performance issues to consider, you can configure as many S3s or HTTP sources as you like for a single collector, okay? There are some scenarios that typically you would use a hosted one. If you're using the cloud, if you have a cloud infrastructure, okay? Now, it's possible to rely on the cloud data collection entirely, but it's not typical. So again, right, this slide is all, the big takeaway is from an actual hosted collector perspective. Now let's look at those install collectors. We're going to look at two different approaches. We're going to look at a distributed approach where we're installing on multiple servers. Okay, now what it's going to do is send your logs, your metrics. It's going to encrypt and compress them to our environment. Now, maybe the source types you're collecting your logs and metrics from, maybe it's your apps. You have some custom apps. Maybe it's the Windows events, okay? Maybe it's the network devices, or maybe your database content, okay? So those are the source types for a collector, the install collector. Now, with an install collector, there's no required hardware. It gives you direct access to those logs. And again, it allows you to troubleshoot easily, okay? That Sumo Logic install collector are lightweight and efficient, okay? The scenario, typically, if you have a large number of target hosts, if you do not have any resources to maintain or build your centralized infrastructure collectors, or if you want to automate your deployments and configurations. And another scenario, if you're comfortable with the target host being connected to the internet, or you have the majority of your target hosts in the cloud. So that's the distributed install collector approach. And then finally, we have a centralized approach, okay? The Sumo collector is installed on a set of dedicated machines. These collectors collect those targets from those machines and then sends it to our Sumo Logic environment. The source types can be middleware, remote events, database content. Again, those are just typical source types. No outbound internet access. It can leverage existing logging and infrastructure scales. Drawbacks is dedicated hardware, and again, some complexity. It might be for failovers or syslog rules or any scaling up and down. The typical scenarios, you don't have too many of those target hosts. You have dozens, not thousands. Your logs are aggregated and they're storing infrastructure that can be leveraged. Okay, and then finally, the limitations or concerns are in terms of their connectivity to the internet for the target host. Now, we talk about within our tool a large amount of time about collecting logs. But ladies and gentlemen, we also collect metrics. We have to remind everyone that we collect those different types of metrics, your Carbon 2.0, your Graphite, your Prometheus metrics. From your AWS, we grab those AWS tags, those CloudWatch metrics, your Stack driver metrics, your Azure monitor metrics. Again, ladies and gentlemen, we capture and we also report on metrics as well. So you can consume those metrics in here as well. Now, when it comes to ingestion, the question also comes up, well, again, Odell, how much space or how much ingestion do I need? Is there some limitations or anything like that? And basically, each account is given data points per minute. And you're going to see that when we get more into the administration, you're going to be able to identify that. Okay. Now, Sumo does not ingest metric data that is more than 1 week old. So let's take a look at the retention process down at the bottom. Okay. And we're talking about how your data is going to be stored. Now, your metric data is going to be stored as raw 1 minute and 1 hour resolutions. Okay. And it's going to be retained according to our diagram over to the right. So our raw data is going to be retained for 7 days. Our 1 minute resolution will be for 30 days. And our 1 hour resolutions will be for 13 months. Now, for any historical roll-ups, any of those 1 minute, 1 hour, Sumo is going to calculate the min, the max, and the count for those metrics per minute or hour. Now let's take a look at our metadata design. Again, you guys should remember, you ladies and gentlemen should remember this. We talked about this if you've taken the course with me. We talked about the metadata tags. And again, tags are essentially those actually names given to a description. And you're seeing 3 types of metadata tags here. You'll see one in bold, that's our preferred or recommended, the underscore source category. This one can be freely configured. And if you take a look at the screenshot, we've configured it to our labs here. Okay. We could configure that to maybe our AWS region East labs here, or maybe our prod labs here, or dev, or what have you. So again, we can freely configure it. That's the one that we're going to use most often. That's the one you'll see us use as well. All right, now, when we talk about those naming conventions, when we use those metadata tags, we want to begin with the least descriptive and then go down and get more descriptive as we get more granular, okay? The recommended nomenclature for our source categories, again, are highest level down to the least. Excuse me, least down to the highest. So for example, if you look at our description here, you'll see that we have our environments. That might be one way that you've broken down your environment. You might have broken down by prod, UAT, or dev, okay? Or maybe you've broken it down by application name, or geographically, or like the example I gave you early, AWS region, or even by business unit. So you're seeing examples of how the actual source categories have been defined. So for example, if I ever use an environment, I could distinguish my prod, my app, Apache Access, as opposed to dev or UAT. I can go application name, Tomcat, Catalina, and so forth. Now, there are also some other advantages to those naming conventions. If you follow a good naming convention, you can, of course, define the scope of your searches. You can use our RBAC, our role-based access control, where you can designate who can see what and so forth, which source category can be displayed, okay? You can also partition as well your actual source categories. So again, those are just some examples. You also have best practices that you can actually go out and take a look at our best practices for your categories and bad source categories as well. All right, so this is an actual description of what we are about to do in this upcoming lab. We are first going to download a file, okay? That file is going to be used for one of our sources. It'll be lab 2. So once we download that file, we'll come back to it later. We'll then install our collector and then define 2 sources. Okay, so that's going to be the steps that we'll follow. All right, let's go ahead and get into our environment. I would like for you to access our training environment to think of and use a 3-digit number from 1 to 999. Any 3-digit number you can think of from 1 to 999. Go ahead and put that number in the chat like a lot of you are doing. Thank you so much. I might want to remind you, ladies and gentlemen, and point out to you, we are not using the same credentials. So if you've taken a class with me this week, we are not using the analyst credentials. We're going to play the role of the admin. So thank you, all of you that thought of your 3-digit number and you've put it in the chat window. Thank you very much. I am going to demonstrate how you're going to log in for those of you that never have logged into our environment. So you, of course, are going to open up a browser. You're going to type in service.sumologic.com. I put the credentials in the chat as well for you. Once you type that service.sumologic.com to get access to our training environment, because we manage this, we know what's in it, we know the data, etc. You're then going to log in. And again, remember, you're using a different user ID, email address. So we're going to type in the word training and this, and then the plus symbol. And this time we'll type in admin. Okay. And we'll use the number that you provided. Again, you'll have access to our training environment for a month, okay? We changed the password the first month, the first Monday of each month. So we just changed the password already for admin because this was the first Monday this week. So you have all the way until the first Monday of next month. Anyhow, you're then going to put the @ symbol, sumologic.com, and then the password, ladies and gentlemen, and let me go ahead and display that, is uppercase A for admin, and then the number 22, and then an exclamation mark. So again, everyone go ahead and use your number to log in to as an administrator. Once you log in, please confirm that you logged in by either A, letting me know in the chat, or B, raising your hand. I don't want to leave anyone. Thanks, Joseph. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Petra. Let us know if you have any problems logging in. You can put that in the chat for us. That would be awesome. Thank you for raising your hands as well. Again, we don't want to leave anyone. So again, if you have any issues logging in, please let us know. Thank you, Joseph, Scott, Jerry, Martin, Cam, Paywan, Alonso. Well, no, Paywan is the last person there. Okay. Thank you all for raising your hands, letting me know you're in. Thank you, David. All right, so again, if you have any problems, just let us know in the chat and we'll get to you. All right. So just a reminder for some of you, in case you forgot or haven't played in the environment, if you came in the environment and you see a blue stack of pancakes right here and you see the phrase Sumo Logic, if you click on that stack of pancakes, it's going to make your navigation panel visible, okay? There's an arrow there that hides it. The stack of pancakes shows it, okay? Over to the right, if you see a bunch of tabs open, again, maybe someone used your training credentials before, you can go to any one of those tabs and close them all, okay? Now, let's go ahead and click on the Home tab, then click on the Learn link. For those of you that have been in course with me this week, you know on the Learn link, we've done our fundamentals from the Learn link. And I mentioned to you that we're going to do our administration from the Learn link as well, okay? I am going to go ahead and add this link to the chat in case some of you can't get to it. All right, and let us know if you have any problems here. When I click on that introduction to this administration labs, basically it's saying, hey, you're logging into the training environment. That's what the introduction screen typically does for us, okay? Also, it gives an email, ladies and gentlemen, in case you want to play after the actual password is changed next month. Here's an email address that you can kind of get the password from. That's one way of getting it as well. All right, let's go ahead and click on the link that goes to Lab 1, install a collector. Again, let's click on that link, install a collector. I am going to lead you and guide you through these labs. So Lab 1 here, we're going to install a collector. To ingest data into Sumo Logic, we must set up one or more collectors and sources. We will show you how to install a collector. We will then set up a source in Lab 2 and another source in Lab 3, okay? So if you scroll down here, you'll see there's an area where it reads, before you begin. You'll see that there's a file that we need to download. It's called Apache Access Logs Tutorial. We're going to use that file later as a source. So let's go ahead and right click on it and save as. If you've already clicked on it and you clicked on it and it opens and shows you the data, then you're going to close it and of course go back and right click and save. All right, so far all we've done, ladies and gentlemen, is download a file to our environment. Let's now go down to the category install collector, okay? To stream our data into Sumo Logic for viewing and analysis, we have to set up a collector in sources, okay? A collector is a lightweight software package that you install on your host machine in the environment to collect the data from those machines, okay? So we're on the part of our lab where it says download the collector package, okay? So let's go ahead and go back to our CIP. Now, let me remind you, ladies and gentlemen, if you're in a Google Chrome environment, you can pin your tabs. So I'm just going to right click on my lab guide tab and pin it, okay? I want to be able to toggle quickly from my CIP back to my lab guide. Scott, you can right click on any one of your Google Chrome tabs up top to pin it. Okay, so I right click on one of them, I can pin it. And now it allows me to quickly toggle between those items. Okay. All right, now, so again, we are in our CIP. Scott, just right click and download that file. We're downloading the file to our actual machines. So right click on it and download it. Or save as, I'm sorry, save as. Okay. Yeah, just save it on your machine. The machine that you're on, you're installing on, you're on right now. That's perfect. All right, now let's go over into our navigation panel, ladies and gentlemen. And let's go down to our main menu. Remember, that's the darker shaded area. And let's click on the phrase manage data. You should see some sublinks under manage data. And let's go ahead and click on the collections. Now, when we come to the collections, there's a lot going on, ladies and gentlemen. So first of all, you see at the top of the screen, there's 4 tabs. We're on the collections tab. Underneath the tab, you'll see we have an area where we can search for a collector. Underneath the search, you can see we can filter for a specific type of collector. Over to the right of that, you'll see we have the top number of items. So we're saying the 10 collectors here. Over to the right, we can see that it has the expand capability. Right now, all of the items are expanded. You and I can go ahead and click on none so we can collapse everything. We're seeing one of so many pages. Now, if you recall, ladies and gentlemen, when we took the fundamentals course, we came in here before and we looked at our actual collector, but we didn't have all these options because we were logged in as the analyst. Today, we're logged in as the admin and we have all of these capabilities enabled for us. Let's go ahead and click on the add collector in the top right corner. Let's click on that link. Notice here you get different types of collectors. You can do a hosted collector or an install collector. You and I together are going to do an install collector for the first part of this here lab. Okay. So again, if I went too fast, again, I'm in the collectors collection. I went over to the right and clicked on the add collector link. And you and I are going to choose the installed collector. Now, depending on what type of machine you're on, I am on a Mac. That's going to determine which type of collector you install. So if you're on a Windows machine, you're probably on a 64-bit. Okay. I'm going to use this Mac OS for Intel. Again, some of you may be on Linux, but again, these are our choices. I'm going to go ahead and choose my Mac OS Intel. It, of course, is going to download that install collector. And mine is progressing and installing the Sumo Logic collector. Once that installs, we then will be able to double click on it and go ahead and run the installation. And almost done here. Hopefully I haven't left anyone and you guys are all in accordance to where I am. So I just installed it. Here it is. I am going to go ahead and double click on it. It prompts me to go ahead and launch that. So it goes through its steps. So again, mine is going through the steps of installing and uninstalling. So you'll see that. So hopefully you guys are all on this period. It's going to eventually prompt me to log in to this machine. No worries if yours is still downloading. Some of our machines are going to be slower than others. Again, no worries. And just to remind you again, ladies and gentlemen, we are following the guide steps, our lab guide. So again, if I do get in front of you, again, you can always come back to the lab guide and kind of catch back up to where we are. Right now, we're just installing the collector. We've already selected the actual operating system. we're going to eventually get to a screen where the app prompts us to actually install. Okay. And again, you guys are, thank you for your patience. We're going to all get there shortly. Again, if you have gone ahead of me, please stop where you see it prompts you for a token or an access key. Please stop and wait for us there. Some of you have already gotten to this part. So again, just wait. There's some things that I want to point out to you. So again, I appreciate your patience. Yeah, that's true, Rodolfo. You're going to need admin privileges for that machine in order to install this. So maybe this will be a point where you'll watch. Again, it's still doing some background processing, so it'll come up shortly, and then I'll be able to click on the actual link and continue on. Also, let us know if you have any issues with the installation. Again, it may be slow in some of your environments, but again, let us know if you have any issues. Again, ladies and gentlemen, just giving the tool an opportunity to install the collector. I have one of the slower machines here at the company, so normally this wouldn't take this long. So again, I appreciate your patience. Again, ladies and gentlemen, yes, we're waiting for that the actual installation to start on my machine. Yours may have already started. And if you look at the lab guide, again, you might be at one of these steps. And again, I want you to make sure once you get there, you're at that access key point, just kind of hold on there and I'll catch up with you shortly. All right, so here I finally got the prompt to log in. So I'll go ahead and log in and hopefully it'll pick up speed for me. Gemini Cricket. All right. So I gave it the credentials and then it'll start unzipping and installing momentarily. Brad, is yours? Well, you're fine. Brad is okay. Rodolfo, is yours? And Petra, have yours gotten to this point yet? All right, good, good. Good, Petra. Awesome. Yeah, Sam, that's great. That's where we want you to be. Again, you'll see mine is now coming up where it's going to go through the install. Cam, maybe you need to reboot your system. Yeah, Bashkara, I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name. Yep, that's where I want you to be, so that's great. Again, you'll get this message if you haven't already, ladies and gentlemen. You're going to go ahead and accept the agreement. You'll click next. Okay, Scott, no worries. We'll continue on. Be aware, ladies and gentlemen, it's going to choose a directory to install. You could browse and put it in a different directory, but we leave that as it is as default. We're in a wizard mode of this installation of the setup. So we'll click next. And then it'll go through the process of installing. Now mine may take a couple minutes here, so this might be a good time for us to go ahead and take a break. I'll go ahead and take our 5-minute break and come back. So I'll put the timer up while this is going through the process, and then we'll come back in 5. Okay, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Hopefully you had an opportunity to get away from the actual monitor, stretch, breathe, get coffee, etc. Let's see the status of where my installation is. Bear with me. All right, so hopefully everyone has gotten to this point. Please let me know if you have not gotten to this point. I know some of you don't have admin rights, so you're going to watch in this case, but make sure you're at this point. Now, I want to point out a few things here. The collector name, ladies and gentlemen, that collector name, that's your host name. That's the name of your machine. So when we go look for the collector, remember this name because we're going to search for it. Okay. So that's the first thing to be mindful of. Now, let's say that this collector name is not something that you want. Let's say you don't want it to be the machine name. You have the ability to go to the advanced settings. And there you can rename the collector. You can also add other pertinent information once it comes back. So again, I could change the name of my collector. All of these other options we'll leave as blank as default, but we could also set these options as well. URL, proxy, and sources, all of those have default options. We're going over this. Again, you're not going to change anything, just showing you where things are when you start getting into the real world. All right, I'm not going to change anything. I'm just going to click next, go back to where I was, where you should be as well. If you're not, I'll get to where you are shortly. No, I didn't, Petra. I didn't go over the access key yet. I'm not at that point. I'm just at the summary tab. I'm in a wizard mode, so I'll be there shortly, okay? So here, ladies and gentlemen, is where everyone should be if you aren't already. You have two choices. You have a token that we could utilize for connectivity, or we have an access key. A token can only be used once. So once it's created and it's done, okay? Where an access key is reusable. So we are going to use an access key. So go ahead and click on the radio button for your access key. You're in a wizard mode, so let's go ahead and click next. We're going to be prompted to provide an access ID and an access key, okay? We're going to go create an access key, ID and key now. Let's go back to the CIP. So let's go back to the continuous intelligence process program. And let's make sure that we're in our navigation panel. Let's go down to the main menu, the darker shaded area. Let's click on the user ID that we logged in as. Underneath our user ID, we'll see 3 links. Let's click on the preferences sublink there, preferences. On our preferences page over to the right, you should see an area where it says my access keys. And then further over, you'll see add access key, the blue button. Let's click on that blue plus button, add access key. Let's go ahead and give our access key a name. Let's call it AK for access key underscore, and let's give it our initials. You don't have to put the date, the timestamp here. I'm just doing that for myself. Okay, so all we did so far is click on the add access key button. We then created a name by using AK underscore our initials. Let's go ahead and click on the create key. Now, let me point this out, ladies and gentlemen, it's very important. If your company has any type of librarying mechanism, a library where they keep track of all of the access keys, then you would want to copy at this juncture right here. You would want to copy your access key and put it in the library now. Because once we click done, you'll never see that key again. So again, if your company has a library mechanism or system where they store all their access keys that have been created, you want to capture this right now and put it in that library. Okay, that's just an important piece of message, information you need to keep under your hat. Okay, now let's go ahead over to the right where it says access ID and click on the word copy. That copies it to memory. We can then go back to our installation steps and paste in the access ID. Then we'll go back to our access ID that we created and go back to the access key, go to the right of it, click copy. Then we'll go back to our installation steps and paste. Odell, what are we doing? Well, ladies and gentlemen, what we're doing is we're walking you through creating a collector, and then we're going to create some sources. So we downloaded the Sumo Logic collector, it installed and expanded and got us to this process. Okay, so hopefully everyone is to this point. Let's go ahead and click next in the wizard. It's now going to go and attempt to connect to the Sumo Logic environment. All right. I'll eventually get a connection and then we'll close out. Mine takes a little longer than some of yours. So again, thanks for your patience. If you're following along in the lab guide, again, we've already done step 9 where we did the access key, and we're doing next so it can connect. We would eventually end up being on where it says generate access key. We're eventually end up being on step 6 here. So that's where I kind of want you to kind of stand put once you get there. Some of you may be ahead of me, or some of you may be still installing. So give us a status where you are. Good. Thank you, Wei. Thank you, Zhang. Thank you, Jerry. Thank you, Petra. Good, Sam. Yeah, some of you guys are going to be a little bit ahead of me, but I appreciate that. You're waiting on the rest of the class. Thank you so much for your patience. Thanks, Brad. Yep, I know. Thanks, Brad. Thank you, Matthias. So I assume a lot of you have already gotten to this point because I see a few of you commented. So hopefully you've gotten to this point, or you've already passed this point. And again, just to remind you, ladies and gentlemen, you are in our training environment, and I do have one of the slower machines. So again, it's taking a moment here. So thank you for your patience. Typically, it doesn't take this long. When you get into your real world installation, it's going to go a lot smoother and faster. Also, let us know if you're having any trouble with installation or you ran into any problems. Let's put it in the chat and we'll kind of address that as well. So you can see I get a pop-up message that's letting me know, hey, it took a little longer than expected. All right, so eventually, again, I'll try it again. It'll work probably the second time. Mine usually does that. I'm going through the same process as we just through. All of that information is stored, so I'm just going through it again. And it'll connect probably. Again, the 500-foot overview of what we're doing, ladies and gentlemen. We're installing that vehicle, that collector that gets our logs and metrics into the environment. So we first have to define that collector, and we're going to do that, and that's what we're doing now. And then we'll define sources, okay? There's 1,000 sources per collector that you can define. So you can have up to 1,000 sources per collector. After I get to the finish button or the done button, I'm going to click that, and then we're going to go and search for the collector that we created. So if you're at that point, you could go to step 7 and look for your collector and see if it's there. You have to remember the machine name in order to find that collector. So some of you that are ahead of me, if you want to, you can go ahead and search for your collector to make sure it has been created. And I'll be there momentarily. I'm still with you, just being patient until this actually process finishes. And I, again, thank you for your patience as well. All right. Let me try it just one more time and see if I can get it through. Hopefully none of you are running into the same issue that I have. You've already gotten to the point where you needed to be. Okay, Jose, I'll try that. Let me try clicking done. He said he clicked done on the actual. Let's go back here and click done and see if that works. Good point. Maybe that'll help. Sorry that is stalling, Martin, again. Yeah, my new key is already there. It's just this page hasn't been refreshed, that's all. No, I have these issues when I do this course, Brad, so it's something that we're working on. Petra, so again, make sure you say you don't see your collector, make sure you're searching for the name, maybe put a wildcard in there and search for it. Okay, I got another message here, so I'm going to see if I can resolve that. I know some of you are, I appreciate your suggestions. I'm on a newer laptop, so I think I might have a processor that's not being utilized yet. So let's see here. So my access key is here. So the access key was created. Some of you are looking to find your collector. Again, make sure that, again, you remember the collector name or what have you. I'm gonna use a wildcard and see if there's anything there for me. So here's one here, but again, it's arrowed out. So that one's old. Let me get rid of that one. All right, let me try this one more time, ladies and gentlemen. I see a few of you also are having problems with your collector installation. Again, normally this is not typical. Jerry, you're right. I didn't want to expose that to everyone, but Jerry, you are correct. Petra, if you don't see it, I can only say you reinstall. If it's not there, if you don't see it, that's the only thing I can think of for you. For those of you that would like to, you can continue on with the lab. You're going to go ahead and find your collector. Hopefully you did find it. Okay. Again, if your collector is not showing up, make sure you're using the right credentials to find it. Again, that machine name is what I'm assuming it's going to be. If you're not finding it, then you'll have to reinstall, but it should be there with the name that you have, especially if you went through the process. Okay, Brad, good. Glad you found it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead and move on. I'll let this run in the background. You and I, for those of you that are ahead of me, let's go ahead and move on to add a source, okay? So let's move on to lab 2, add a source. The big takeaway from the adding collector is basically choosing the correct collector to install and creating the access key. That's the big thing from there, okay? All right, now on to adding a source in lab 2 is where we are, okay? So we can have the correct permissions to be, for our file to be accessed, we're gonna move that downloaded file. So that Apache access logs tutorial text file, we're gonna move on our Mac machines, we're gonna move that to the TMP directory. On your Windows machine, you'll move it to the TEMP, okay? So again, I'll demonstrate that for you. I'll bring up my actual file finder. And I'll go ahead and look for the file that I downloaded. Okay. The file that I downloaded is right here. It's called Access Apache. I'm going to right click and copy it. Again, I'm in my file finder, so I'll go to the, whoops, this one to install now. I guess it wants to install. Let me go through that as well. So again, I'll go up to the Go menu choice. Then I'll go down to the Go to folder, and I'll go to my temp directory. And I'm going to paste this item in my temp directory. Okay. So again, if you're following along in the lab guide, the steps are here. We're going to our file finder, going to the folder TMP, and we're copying that Apache access log text file over to that TMP directory so we can have access for it. All right, I just want to click that background process while it's still going there. Hopefully it'll pick up. Click next. Okay. Joseph, are you on a Mac and you don't have a TMP directory? So, and you did the go to folder like I'm doing on the screen, and you typed in TMP. Or maybe you don't have access to your temp directory. That could be a possibility. Not sure why, but that could be possible. Oh, you see it now? Okay, good. All right, great. All right, so yeah, you're just moving that file over to that directory. Awesome. All right, now, again here, we've moved that file. So we're now on the create the Apache log source in our lab guide. Okay, we have a collector on our machine already. We're gonna now add a source. Okay, so let's go back to our CIP. And let me see if I can find, I'm gonna use another collector here. Josh, do you have one out here that I can use?
No, I don't have one.
Is this yours here?
No, that's for something else.
Okay. Oh,
You can use any of them just to show it real fast. You can use that other one.
okay. Let me just make sure I don't have one out here and that I can utilize real quickly. I don't. That's awesome. Okay. I just wanted to make sure. I'll use any one of these. Now, ladies and gentlemen, on the next step here, we're going to find our collector. So find your collector. And you're going to go all the way over to the right of your collector. Once you find it, let me just use one of these. And you're going to click on the add button. So again, you're finding your collector wherever it is. And then you're going to use the add button and choose add source. Okay. And we have different platform sources, Windows sources, as well as file sources. You and I, for this first example, is going to go ahead and use a local file as a source. So let's go ahead and click on the local file. And we want to give it some credentials. We're going to follow what we have in our labs here. So we're going to call it Apache logs with our initials. Okay. And we're going to provide a file path as well as a source category. So I'm going back to the CIP. And again, I'll call this Apache logs with my initials. Okay, and then we want to give it a file path. Again, we're using the temp directory. So it's /tmp, and if you're using Windows, it's /temp/Apache access log tutorial.txt. That's what we're using as a file path. We also want to designate a source category. We're going to add prod Apache access. So you want to go ahead and make sure your actual local file collector definition looks like mine. We give it a name, Apache logs with our initials. We specify the path, TMP, and the file name, and we give it a source category. You also have the ability, and we'll talk about this a little later, you could do set up your field and values as well. if you want to kind of filter down a little bit more. All right, so let's go ahead at the bottom of the screen and let's click Save. If you go ahead and expand your collector name, you should see that you have a new collector there. Okay, so you'll see the actual health of the collector. Remember, we talked about having a stoplight, a traffic light in our imagination. So red is bad, yellow is a warning, and green is good. So right now, this particular collector is healthy. I can see prod Apache access. That's the actual source category that was defined. You'll also notice that there's a little blue icon over to the right of it. It allows you to open up in search. So it's going to open up this actual collector and attempt to run it and get some data. Now, you may or may not see data there. You can change the time period and come back to this a little later if you're not seeing data being ingested, okay? Or any records there. All right, let's go back to our lab guide. So we did all of that. We added the new source. We actually opened it up to test the source. Again, by clicking on the icon that launched the actual log search. We also changed the time period to run it. So a nice job, everyone. You now set up a source on your local machine so that the data in the Apache Access file that you downloaded on your machine in part 1 is now available, okay? Let's go ahead and click on our lab number 3. I use this I might have used yours. If you're seeing I use yours, no worries there. I use the client AG. So if that's yours, I apologize. Again, there's no big deal. I'm naming my items that I create with my initials. Brad, you're going to get data eventually. Make sure you change the time period, and you can come back and look at the query a little later. It's going to take a minute for you to see it. Okay. All right. Let's go ahead, ladies and gentlemen, and click on Lab 3, collecting and visualizing host metrics. Thank you, Anad. I appreciate it. Thank you, sir. Or ma'am, I'm not sure. All right, so again, we're on Lab 3, collect and visualize host metrics. Okay. So so far we learned how to install a collector and add a log source. Now let's shift some gears and let's set up a host metric source. And we're going to visualize some data collected from that source and install a host metric app for an out of the box dashboard. Okay, so here's our diagram. We've done lab 1 and lab 2 so far. Now we're going to go ahead and do lab 3. Again, we're going to go back to our collector and add a source. So I'll demonstrate that. Let me go back to the CIP with you. I'm clicking on my collections tab. Again, I'm going back to my collector. And again, I'm using that client AG one. I'm going to go all the way over to the right, just as you should, and click on the add link. So we're adding again for our collector name. We're going to add a source again. This time, we're going to go ahead and add a platform source, which is a host metric. So right here in the center, you're going to click on that host metric. Again, we're going to give it a name and set up some other criteria. So we want to name it Apache host metrics with our initials. We want to give it a source category. So those are the two things we're going to do. We're going to give it a name and specify the source category. So going back to the CIP, I'll give it a name of host metrics. And again, I'll put my initials as well as the date. You don't need to put the date, ladies and gentlemen. We're then going to give it a source category, prod, host metrics. Okay, so those are the only two options that we're going to fill out. But I do want to point out a few other things here. So right now, down at the bottom here, ladies and gentlemen, you'll see that I'm capturing my CPU metrics and I'm capturing my memory metrics. I want a lot of data. You don't have to do this. I'm just giving you an example. I want to capture all of my TCP, all of my network, and all of my disk. Okay, so we have the option of selecting the metric that we want to capture for. It's not mandatory that you do what I just did. I'm just giving you other examples. Okay, let's go ahead and save this. Excuse me. Now, if you locate your collector, find your collector, and you should also be able to see that you now have your host metric. It should be green as healthy. And you'll see it has the actual source category defined. What you'll also notice is there also is a little blue icon to the right of your source category that you can click on that is going to open in metrics. So it allows you to test that that source is generated. And if you give it a couple minutes, it'll, of course, start showing you some of the actual metrics. Okay. You'll see it'll give you some progress down at the bottom eventually. All right, so we did all of those steps. We visualized our host metrics data. We clicked on that icon and we saw some of the host metrics being ingested. So congratulations on this lab. You've created a metric source to send your host metrics information into Sumo Logic, and we can start investigating our host metrics. All right now we're on the install a host metrics app. Okay, we want to see some out of the box dashboards. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and look for go to our app catalog and look for the host metrics. So going back to the CIP, going over to my navigation panel, clicking on my app catalog, and you can see a lot of the sources down under the all categories, but we're going to go ahead and click on the word, type in host. So in our app catalog search area, we'll go ahead and click on the host. It filters down. We see the host metrics app. Let's go ahead and click on it. And remember that it gives you a nice little overview. Hey, this host metric app allows you to monitor performance and resource utilization, as well as processing of your mission critical apps. Okay. You can see some of the preview dashboards down there at the bottom as well. Let's go ahead and click on the add integration blue box that is going to take us in a wizard. We're going to go ahead and click next in the wizard. And we want to set up our host metric data source as well as equate it to an item. So let's go back here. So we want our source category to equal to prod host metrics. So that's what we're going to end up setting, our source category equal to prod host metrics. So going back to the CIP, I see the source category. I'll go ahead and type in prod host metrics. All right, let's try this again. I don't know if you guys are getting this same issue. The minute I type something, it kind of goes away. So let me try this one more time. Yeah, yeah, I see some of you having that problem here as well. Sorry about that. So what I did was just type it in the chat window and copy it from the chat, ladies and gentlemen. So I'm just going to try to paste it here. All right, so try that method. Sam, again, try typing it in there or copying it from the chat and pasting it in that area. All right, so all we did here was set our host metric data source to prod host metrics. Okay, and let's click next in the wizard. You should eventually get the phrase success. Once you get that, you're going to go ahead and exit out of the app catalog. You're going to close the app catalog. Go to your personal folder in your navigation panel. And in your personal folder, you should see a host metrics folder. In that folder, you should see several dashboards. We're going to click on and open up the host metrics overview dashboard. And on here, we can see our CPU, idle times, we can see our memory, our disk, our network, our outbound and our outbytes and inbytes. Again, you have several dashboard panels that are provided here for you. All right, you've now visualized host metrics data. You have the host metrics app dashboard. There's much more that you can do with metrics, okay? We have a link here in your lab guide on working with metrics more in detail that you can find out more information about, okay? All right, let's get back to the slides now. All right, so let's talk about some of these optimization tools, okay? Whoops, didn't mean to do that. Sorry about that. So there's optimization tools for you, and there's really like two approaches when it comes to optimization, okay? There's a field-based approach and an index-based approach. You can use both, okay? The field-based approach for optimization tools is you're going to utilize the field browser, which will allow you to ingest fields, to use those fields that were ingested during ingestion time. Pardon me, use the fields that were parsed out during ingestion time. Wow, having trouble with my lips today. Anyhow, again, you could use those, and you can use field extraction rules. Now, some of you may not be familiar with those, but we did talk about those field extraction rules in our search mastery course. We touched it briefly in our fundamentals. But essentially, again, a field extraction rule allows us to extract fields during ingestion. And we're going to look at that in more in detail. Another approach to optimization is, of course, an indexed approach. And with an indexed approach, we're actually here, we're either partitioning, where we can structure our data into buckets or groups, okay? Or we're creating scheduled views where we have those pre-aggregated data and then we index that. So these are the types of optimization tools that we're going to go through and further talk about. Now, when we talk about the field browser, ladies and gentlemen, if you recall, when we were building log searches, we were able to go over into our field browser. And let me just kind of go into the tool and demonstrate a little bit here. So again, if I just, and you're just watching, ladies and gentlemen, again, if I go into a log search, and I just go in here and I just start, I want my labs Apache here. And I start to filter down and I want my access messages and I want them for the last 60 minutes. So what I'm going to notice here, ladies and gentlemen, is over to the left, I have my messages tab and I see my display fields. Again, we refer to this area as our field browser. So when this source category was ingested, it parsed out fields. And the optimization part that makes it perform a little bit more faster is that you and I, as analysts, we don't have to parse out these fields because they were parsed out during ingestion time. Okay. You'll see other things here during in the field browser. You can find out, you see a little A to the right of things. That's letting you know what type of data is in there. So it's alphanumeric. You might see a pound symbol saying, implying that the data in there is numeric. So you'll see those types of things. You'll also be able to, and I pointed this out yesterday, you can click on the name, not the checkbox. You can click on the name and find out other pertinent information like the approximate count and then the percentages. Okay. Again, we're talking about the field browser as being part of the optimization tools. All right, so again, we pointed out a lot of those objects. We see anything that's checked is going to be displayed. Anything that isn't checked is going to be hidden. We can use those hidden fields because they were, again, parsed out during ingestion time. Now, let's talk about field extraction rules. Okay. Oh, I see this thing is actually going through its process. Okay, that's good. So if we take a look at our field extraction rules for a moment here, and let me go back to my CIP and let's go back to the navigation panel. You're sort of just watching. I'm going through at a high level all of these options. Okay, so now I'm in my main menu here. I'm going to go down to my logs. And I have 5 tabs. I have 6 tabs up here. I want to look at my field extraction rules. And again, you can add you can add it as an administrator. You can add excuse me, as an administrator, you can add an FER, a field extraction rule. Okay. Again, you can designate when the extraction rule is going to be applied, either during ingestion time or runtime. You can specify the scope of it, and then you want to go ahead and build the parse statement. I am going to go ahead and look at one that's already been created so we can kind of see it in activity. So here's one. It's called the demo FER. The status, it's enabled. When is it going to be applied? It's going to be applied at ingestion time. So these fields will be extracted and stored when the data is received by Sumo Logic. What's the scope? What is it going to be applied to? It's going to be applied to this source category labs Apache Access. Here's the actual parse statement. Again, we suggest you test those before you actually finally close to make sure everything has been parsed correctly. Here's the fields that are going to be parsed out and available to me in my field browser, pardon me. Okay. All right. Some of the benefits, it's going to be better performance. You also get the standardized fields name. So during that parse, we created fields as well. Now, what that ensures to us is if anyone uses this lab's Apache Access, these field names are what they're going to see. Now, let me digress for a moment. Let's imagine that we didn't have this FER and users needed to extract by using parse statements. Well, you know, when you use a parse statement, you can create a field. So you could name something entirely different than what we use. So what this ensures is that when we parsed out, we created these field names, so everyone is going to be utilizing those same field names. All right, again, some of the best practices, you want to make sure you build some simple and specific rules. You want to make sure you test your parse as well. Also use the no drop. Remember, the no drop allows you to see the actual results, even if they didn't match the actual pattern in the parse statement. There are some limitations. You can only have 50 rules for 200 fields. Again, this can be increased if you contact us about it, okay? Partitioning. Again, partitioning are custom index that again improve performance for your searches. Again, by default, we store all of your data in a default continuous partition. For faster searching or for using our RBAC, you have the ability to create partitions. So your searches don't scan the entire data set. So for example, we could create a partition for our production environment, or maybe development, or maybe we want to create partition for a specific application, okay? Now, all members of your organization can take advantage of this partitioning structure. There's no overlapping. Again, you can have no greater than 20 partitions. Again, ideally, they want to be 1 to 30% of your total value. You can group the data in search together. Also, you can have data retention there as well. Going back to the actual tool, again, partitioning, I went to my manage data, logs, and here's my partitioning. Again, you can come out here and create a partition by clicking on add, give it a name. You can specify the data tier. You can find out more information about continuous, frequent, and infrequent in the help sumologic.com area, okay? You can set up routing expressions as well as retention plans as well on your partitionings. While I'm here, let's go ahead and look at scheduled views. A scheduled view has those pre-aggregated items in them. Again, you can add a scheduled view. The benefit of that is you don't have to wait on the tool to do that aggregation for you. Again, best practices with those scheduled views. Again, they're pre-aggregated data. You can find the needle in the haystack with those objects, as well as you can, we want to remind you, don't insert any comments as it may impede the performance, okay? There are some limitations. We recommend that there's a 1 to 10,000 log messages. Make sure you view the updated by service, allow any backfilling that's needed. And again, you can search the actual view by using the metadata tag _view. And you're going to see us do that coming up as well. Again, these are just some examples of scheduled views. If you wanted to create web access trends or any metrics from your app usages or any threats from analysis or any user behavior. So those are examples of scheduled views in their creations. Again, we're talking about optimization tools. You can extract your fields from the logs and make them available to the user. We're talking about the using your field browser, again, to address those, to grab those fields. And you can use field extraction rules to make sure those fields are available. Again, those partitionings on the index space, they can be segregated by your metadata. Again, that's make sure that we only go to a certain partition for the data that we need. The schedule views, those are going to be pre-aggregated. Now let's take a look at the data management. Okay, and I'll go into tool to actually demonstrate this for you. Go back here. And... all right, so I'm going to click in my account. So just to kind of let you know where I am, ladies and gentlemen, again, I'm in my navigation panel. This time I went to the administration link in my main menu, and now I'm clicking on the account, okay? Here in the account area, I can find out the usage. I can find out how much, look at our plan time. I can see our actual usage, the capacity of utilization here. I can see what we're ingesting, any frequent things. So again, all of this is on my account overview. So this is that 500-foot overview, excuse me, that 500-foot view of your account and how you're utilizing it. Also here in the account is your data management. Here, one of the key things that we want to make sure of when we install an app later, we're going to recommend 2 apps that you install as an administrator. And one of those apps needs to ensure that this area is enabled, and that's for the data volume app. By default, it's enabled for the data volume, but again, this is where you would come if you needed to enable that in order for that app to be installed. You can manage your plan there as well. Again, let me do one thing here. I'm going to quickly log out and log back in as myself. So just bear with me. I want to log in as myself because I had a lot more access rights and permissions in our training environment. So just give me 1 second here to log in and get back to the admin in my navigation panel. All right, so again, back here in my administration here, I can click on my, let's make sure I'm in the right environment. I want to be in the training environment. I have multiple instances, so I have to make sure I'm in the right instance. So now when I go to administration and I go to account, I'll see a lot more, and I can go to my managed plan. I have a little bit more capabilities here as well, okay? All right, now let's go to users and roles. Again, I'm in my administration and looking at users and roles here. This is where you and I can go ahead and see all the users, okay? We can go ahead and add a user. Now, one of the things that we suggest, if you're the administrator, when you add a user, is that you put the full name, the first name and the last name, the full first name, the full last name. One of the reasons that we suggest that is when users come in and take the certification, we want them to be able to have their name on their certification. We don't want it to be training analyst or O. Gordon or Odell G. So again, one of the things we suggest is that you put in both the first and last name. Sam and Bashikari, you won't see this. Again, you're in our training environment. Once you get to your real world environment, you'll see it. So again, I'm showing you this, I'm demonstrating this in the tool, but you'll see this in your real world environment. It's not going to show you here in our training. All right, so again, you want to make sure when you add the user, you add their full name. You also have the ability to create and add roles. So you can give the role a name, and you can designate any type of capabilities for that role. Okay. Again, I am in my administration, user, and roles. Now I'm going to click on the security. All right, now on the security tab here, ladies and gentlemen, we have quite a bit of information that we want to point out here. So our password policy, that first, we have several tabs up here on the security link. So again, our password policy here, we can define when it expires, the reuse capabilities, any type of must contain issues, options that we want, as well as if you want to set up two-step verification and so forth. The minimum length, so all of that is on the password policy list. Some of you have taken the search mastery course, and a question on that exam talked about the service allow list. Okay. Now you could set up your IP addresses and enable users to be able to use, by checking this box, you enable users to only access using that IP. So if they they don't use that IP, they can't access the environment. Okay, so that's one of the options that you'll have available to you there. Okay, and continuing on here, again, you have the enable dashboard allow list. That again will allow you, us, or users can share any dashboards that you've created. Okay, so enables dashboards can be shared. So you can put in those CIDR numbers, or you can put in your actual IP address and check those boxes, and that's going to determine and designate what the actual users can do. We are on the service allowed list choice. Okay. Next to that, you can see all of the access keys. You can also add an access key here. Remember, you and I created an access key by going down into our preferences. But as an administrator, you have the ability to see all of the access keys as well as create them also. Okay. To the right of that are our policies. Again, here, the first policies up there allow you to set up the auditing capabilities. So we could, you could, I could, we could go ahead and enable our audit records. Again, that's capturing information about what's going on. So it'll help you and I go ahead and research and look for any of that information. Okay. All right, let's continue on here. You also have the ability to check this box here where it says support account access. What it does, it grants Sumo Logic support access to your environment. In order for them to do that, this box needs to be checked and enabled. Okay. And then down here, you have the sharing the dashboards outside of your organization. You can enable that. This allows your dashboards to be viewed excuse me, it allows users to share the dashboard with view-only privileges outside of your organization, okay? You also have the ability to enable, set the default data access level for all of those dashboards that are created. You also have the ability to set your per current session limits. So how many concurrent sessions can a user have? And then your user session timeout. This is all on the policies tab, okay? Next here, on the next slide here, we're talking about our single sign-on, our SAML. So you have that ability, again, to, if your company is using single sign-on, this is where you want to go ahead and set that up, okay? The security assertion markup language, that's what that SAML stands for. And again, if your company is using SAML, single sign-on, then this is where you set it up. As an administrator, you have the ability to configure your SAML service, okay? It's a best practice to include the user's full name and last name, so keep that in mind. And again, lastly, you'll see the installation tokens. Again, you can see all of them here, or you can add an installation token. What I've just done, ladies and gentlemen, is I just gone through my administration and looked at the security link. We had already looked at the users and roles and the account. Okay, let's go back to our lab guide. Excuse me, I got back here on our steps here. So we looked at data management. We know that has to be checked. Again, ladies and gentlemen, be aware that you want to take, if this is your first time using the tool, you want to take advantage of the apps that we have, okay? We deliver out of the box dashboards, save searches, and field extraction rules for popular data sources. When an app is installed, you'll see those preset searches and dashboards, and you're able to customize them with your source, okay? The recommended apps that we recommend that you install, again, the data volume and the audit. The data volume, you have to make sure that data volume index option is checked. We know it's checked. I showed it to you earlier. Again, it's in your account. You're going to know it's checked, okay? Also, the audit, it also needs to be enabled, and I show you that as well. So that's checked as well. Now let's talk about your monitoring and ingesting budget, okay? Again, you can, on that ingest budget, which I kind of showed you briefly here, let me go back to that. And let's see here. That's going to be under your managed plan there. Okay, so they kind of renamed it to, yeah, they renamed that. It's going to be managed plan there. Okay, and that capability, again, allows you to monitor your collectors, the usage, as well as you can stop or keep any actions from that namespace. So some of the best practices for monitoring and controlling your ingest budget: assign or recognize collectors that are owned by a team. So you could create collectors for your specific teams in your organization, okay? And you could allocate an ingest budget for that group. So for example, my Q&A team, or my HR team, or my finance team, I could create first of all, I can create a partition. So anything that they need to query is in that partition. And then I can also create an ingest budget as well. The health monitoring for your collectors and sources. Let me get in the tool for that. And let's go to monitoring. So it's under managed data, go to monitoring, and you'll see the health of your events. So you'll see red means bad, and you can go ahead and investigate that by clicking on it, look at more actions to view the object, to view any event history, to kind of find out what happened. Odell, where you are? Where are you in the tool? I don't know where you are. I don't see this in there. Well, again, I'm logged in as myself, so I have more privileges. I'm in my navigation panel. I'm under manage data, and I'm in the monitoring, and we're looking at the health of events. Again, you have monitors capable you can look at, as well as connections that you can look at as well. Again, this is all under your monitoring and your managed data. The global security, I talked about the password policy, as well as the whitelist. We talked about the installation tokens as well. I talked about the policies, as well as the access keys and the tokens. We also talked about the SAML, the single sign-on. We talked about adding new users. Again, one of our recommendations, make sure you add the first name, the full first name, the full last name. Now, be aware, and you should now be aware of this, there's two default roles. We use the analyst role for fundamentals and search mastery. Now we're using the admin role for our administration course. The difference here, the administrator has the ability to manage users and roles and view and manage collectors, whereas the analyst only can see the data. They don't have the ability to manage any of the or use the collectors. Again, we talked about those capabilities, those roles that you can create. Again, you can designate what you want that role capability to have. Content sharing. All right, let me go in tool to kind of demonstrate this to you. Whoops, I keep doing that. Sorry about that. So here I am in the tool. I'm clicking on, let me close all of these tabs first of all, so we can get a cleaner desktop. Okay. And if I click on my library folder tab, if I click on my library tab, right now I'm viewing everything as myself. Since I'm logged in as the administrator, I can change to the content administrator. What this allows me to do is I have exposure to all of the users. So let's say one of our users or a couple of our users actually got promoted and went to a different team, or they're in a different group now, they no longer use it. So I can reassign or assign whatever they have to other users. One of the things we want to remind you of, if you do switch to the content administrator, make sure you switch back to yourselves. Okay. All right. So now let's go ahead and do lab number 4 and 6 together. Lab number 4 and 6. So going back to the lab guide, and I apologize for that background noise. So in our lab guide, we're going to go ahead and click on lab number 4, install an app, and view the data. One of our recommendations that as an administrator is there's 2 apps that we suggest you install. That's the audit app and the data volume app, okay? The Sumo Logic audit app uses Sumo Logic audit index events to present your information about the account management activities, okay? Before you can install this, you have to make sure that the manage is enabled. Manage the audit app is enabled, and it is, ladies and gentlemen. The other app, of course, is the data volume, which allows us to view your data at a glance, the account usage volume, as well as by category, by collector, and source name. Okay, so all those options are set. Let's go ahead and install the audit app. So let's go back to the CIP. And let's go back down to the app catalog. Again, in your main menu, the app catalog. And in our app catalog search area, let's go ahead and type in audit, case insensitive, and hit the return. Again, case insensitive, type in the word audit. It filters down. Again, we're going to use the audit. It just only has the word audit, so that's the app we want. It kind of gives you that description. Hey, the audit app allows you to analyze the audit events of your Sumo Logic account. So let's go ahead and add integration. It's going to take us to a brief wizard mode. We can click next. And I'm just going to give mine my initials. You don't have to do this. I'm giving the folder that it's creating. I'm just going to give it my initials and click next in the wizard mode. We should find that particular. So I got a success. I'm going to exit out, go to my navigation panel and click on the personal tab. And there I see my audit folder. I can expand it. And there's my dashboards and there's some searches. I can open up my library overview. And now I'm seeing my breakdown of where users are logging in from around the world. I can see the top 10 users. So all of these panels, these dashboard panels, is going to have pertinent information about the audit of your environment. Okay. All right, going back to the lab guide, we installed everything. All right. And we actually looked at the overview of the app board. So congratulations, you've installed the audit app. All right. You can also share that app, and I'll go back to the CIP, and I'll go back up to the folder. To the right of the folder, I can click on the 3 dots and choose share. If I was in the actual dashboard that I wanted to share, I could share that dashboard only if I wanted to. But again, we're sharing the entire folder. I can click share, specify my entire organization. Okay, I can notify users and I can share. Of course, users would be able to find that shared object. If they search in the actual library, they should be able to search up that item. And there it is. Okay. All right. Good job. We were able to share it. Now let's go ahead and install the data volume app. Again, before you install this, you have to make sure that checkbox is checked, and we know that it is. So we're going to go ahead and go back to our app catalog and search for data. All right, so again, click on your app catalog, search for data. It filters down. Here's my data volume app. I'm just going to click on it. I can see the overview. It's going to provide summary and details of view of my account's data usage. I can click on the add integration. I am in a wizard mode, so I can just click next. There's really nothing for us to fill out or complete. And you should get a success message, and we'll click exit. Okay. And again, if you go to your personal folder, you should now see your data volume folder. And this particular app only has dashboards in it. Doesn't have any searches. So if I click on my data volume overview, again, I'm seeing my usage percentage of source by source category. I'm seeing my top 5 source categories, seeing my ingest budgets by source category. Again, monitoring my data usage with this app. This can also be shared, again, by going to the 3 dots and sharing it as well. All right, so we were able to open that up and see all of the information. Congratulations, you added the data volume, okay? And as I mentioned, you can share that as well. All right, let's go ahead on to Lab 5. And again, Lab 5, we're going to skip this, but again, letting you know what Lab 5 allows you to do. Lab 5 allows you to do labs 2 through 6 from the fundamentals. But if you've been with me all week, you've already done that. So if you were doing self-service, this would be the instance where we would go ahead and do those labs. But let's go ahead and click on lab number 6. Here, this is just alerting when our data ingest reaches a certain threshold, okay? So if you copy under what's under number 3, the entire query, again, make sure you copy the entire query under number 3. Ideally, you would schedule this query to run every 4 hours with a time range of today. Again, this is only going to return results if the threshold is met. Okay, so let's go ahead and create a new log search in the CIP. You can close all the other tabs. We're done. Create a new log search and let's paste. And let's kind of walk you through it. Okay. So first off, realize we're using a different metadata tag. We're going to get our actual Sumo Logic volume. Okay. We're specifying the category. We're parsing out, and it has multiple items. So we're using a multi, so it brings out multiple items. We're then going to do some multiplication here to get our G bytes. Then we're going to sum our G bytes. We're going to total them. We're then going to specify our plan size. We're then going to divide our today's volume by our G bytes and then divide our today's value by the plan size. That will give us collector percentages and total volumes against plan respectively. Then we add a where clause where we want our plan to be greater than a particular threshold. We sort it, and then we specify. Now, I think someone may have asked this here. This is how we specify the order of how we want our columns to appear. We use the fields command. So when we run this, it should appear collector, G bytes, etc. And I'm just going to change it to 6 hours and run it. Again, this here log search is actually for us to set up alerts. You'll notice my fields command, I have collector, G bytes in the order of how I specified it, okay? All right. That concludes the lecture and the labs. Any questions here? All right. So if there aren't any questions, you know what time it is. It's time for us to go ahead and do the actual exam. So let me demonstrate what you're going to do. First of all, realize you're still logged in to our training environment. So you're going to sign out of our training environment. Again, you're going to sign out of our training environment. You're then going to log into your company's Sumo Logic environment. You're going to log into your company's Sumo Logic environment. And again, if you've taken the course with me all week, you know it's the same sort of steps here. Okay. So once I log into my company's environment, I'll then click on my home tab, click on the certification link, and I'll click on the phrase get certified. Again, once we click on get certified, we then click on get certified again in our area. And then we want to look for the administration exam. It should be the second icon there. You're going to click on the administration exam. You're going to quickly register by clicking on the register for free. It's going to give you an overview of there's 30 questions. It's 60 minutes. It's open book. Okay. You might want to go to your slides. Don't forget to use your help resources as well. Okay. You'll then go through and make sure you go through all the questions. Make sure you click finish or complete, and it'll give you what you got right and what you got wrong. It doesn't give you the answers, but then you can take the test again. Okay. So again, you're going to start here. Which of the following variables is not a valid webhook payload variable? And this would be probably something you would go ahead and search for. And I think it is, I know we do num results, time, and first time, so I think it's raw results in JSON. So you would go through all the questions, you would submit your answers. After you submit, you say, I got that one wrong. You would see what you got wrong. You would then close the course, and you could, of course, retake that. Okay. All right, let's see. I see we have a few questions here. Can we have access to the PowerPoint? All right, let me demonstrate to you how you get access to the PowerPoint. Okay. So if you watch my screen, when you log in, ladies and gentlemen, and you click on certification and you click on get certified. Joseph, this is for you. Oh, you found it? Okay. Well, if it's not for you, it's for others. Joseph found where to find the actual slides, so I'm going to demonstrate to others. So if you want the slides and the lab guide, as well as the video, you come to the recorded live training. And then you choose, we just took the actual administration course, choose the administration, you register quickly, and then you'll have the ability to download the slides, the lab guides, as well as the 2-hour lecture that I just went through. Okay. All right, I think there were some other questions. Let's see. Thank you, Justin. Have a good rest of your day. Let's see here. I don't think so. I think that's everybody. Okay, I'll look and see if there's other questions. Again, thank you for allowing myself to present, and Josh as well to present to you today. We look forward to you being in some of our upcoming trainings. Again, I'm going to go ahead and turn off the recording, allow you to take the exam. I will put in the Uber Eats voucher. You're welcome, Martin. You can take the actual exam anytime you want. Again, you can take it as many times as you want as well. Thank you as well.